Putin hinted at nuclear retaliation against the West over the weekend and yesterday in a speech if they threaten Russia's sovereignty, and said hundreds of thousands of Russian civilians could be forced to serve in Ukraine. Well, in response, Russians mobilized on the streets of Moscow, demonstrating against Putin's controversial move. More than 1,300 people were arrested, and there are reports by Reuters that some of them were handed military draft papers while in custody. Other Russians are fleeing the country to avoid conscription. Flights from Moscow to all visa-free destinations selling out quickly. Joining us now to talk about all of this is John Kirby, the National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications. John, thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the nuclear threats.
Yes.
How seriously should the West be taking these brazen nuclear threats from Vladimir Putin?
We have to take them seriously, and we are. In fact, as you know, this isn't rhetoric that is new to Mr. Putin. He's been making these kinds of threats since almost the beginning of the war. He certainly amped it up a little bit yesterday, but yes, we have to take that seriously. I mean, he's a modern nuclear power, and it's just irresponsible for him to be talking about the potential use of nuclear weapons or any weapons of mass destruction when we're seeing what's going on inside Ukraine.
Do you think he's seriously considering using tactical nuclear weapons?
It's difficult to know exactly what's in his mind and what he will or he won't do. What I can tell you,
that they've moved anything on the ground?
Yeah, what I can tell you is we're monitoring this as closely as we can, Andrea. We have no indications that we need to change our strategic deterrent posture. I think I'll leave it there.
And when we think about other weapons that he might use, what about chemicals?
Certainly, he has chemical weapons at his disposal. That's worrisome as well. Again, it's difficult to know how he's going to react to the losses that he has suffered. Now, we have seen at least a part of that reaction in this call-up of the reservists and calling for these sham referenda here in the East and in the South. We have said from the very beginning that first of all, the war should end. Short of that, there's no reason for it to escalate. And escalating in terms of weapons of mass destruction, that's not only going to be disastrous for the Ukrainian people, but it's potentially disastrous for the European continent. Certainly, it's not in keeping with our national security interests.
Ukraine has made some significant advances in the Northeast. There's no sign that either side is ready to negotiate. Ukraine was ready, I should say, ready to negotiate earlier. And there was nothing serious coming back from Vladimir Putin, from Lavrov and others at the table. And at this point, it looks like a long conflict.
We said a few months ago when Mr. Putin sort of regrouped and was focusing on the East and the South that this could be a prolonged conflict. Obviously, we're starting to see that play out. Neither side appears to be willing to sit down and negotiate. And so what we're going to do and what we're focused on, and you heard the president talk about this yesterday, is make sure we can continue to help Ukraine succeed on the battlefield so that if and when it gets to a point where they can sit down at the table, President Zelensky has a stronger hand in the negotiations.
Are these protests in Russia significant?
It's certainly noteworthy, isn't it? We haven't seen that before. We're starting to see some cracks here. A week or so ago, the leaders of China and India publicly expressing concerns about what Mr. Putin is doing in Ukraine. We've seen elected municipal officials in the last week or so also come out publicly against what's going on in Ukraine. And now you see these protests and these individuals who are refusing to subscribe to his mobilization call. It is becoming two things are, I think, obvious. One, certainly that Mr. Putin now recognizes, I mean, you can see it just in his speech, that he clearly understands the degree of failure that he's had in Ukraine. That's obvious. And that he's no longer able to keep it from the Russian people, that he just can't obscure the truth anymore. When you do a partial mobilization of 300,000 troops, that's not, you can't do that in quiet and secret.
Is that an indication that their casualty numbers are worse than have been reported?
We know that they have suffered significant casualties, both killed and wounded. We're careful about the numbers because they fluctuate, and I don't know that we have perfect visibility, but it has been substantial. He has suffered significant casualties on the battlefield. We think that this is in part and parcel of replenishing those troops, but also could be indicative of additional offensive moves that he wants to make inside Ukraine.
What about the Russian filtration, where they're taking people, making them hostages, taking them over to Russia, then having these fake referenda so that they can expand what they call the territory, the Russian territory, and perhaps draw a new red line against Ukrainian assault.
It's abhorrent, and it's a piece of his effort to basically wipe away Ukraine, wipe away their sovereignty, wipe away their culture, wipe away their right to exist. The president talked about that too yesterday. So we've called it out. We've been very public about what we've seen with these filtration camps, and we do think that he's now in a bit of a hasty schedule to get some of these sham referenda in place over the next couple of days, so that he can at least try to claim some political legitimacy for obviously territory gains that he hasn't been able to make militarily.
Turning to Iran, Treasury has sanctioned Iran for the death of one woman, a 22-year-old woman who was arrested for not properly wearing her hijab, her head covering,
right,
and for these police that go around beating women, arresting them. In this case, the terrible death of this woman.
Yes. Yes. They sanctioned the morality police who had her in custody when she died, as well as some additional Iranian officials, as I understand it. Look, the right to peaceful protest should be universal, and the United States stands, as the president said yesterday, for that right. Iran should stop the violence and cracking down on these protesters, allow them to peacefully protest. And as you saw, we're not going to be bashful about taking action as appropriate.
The leader of Iran told us at a briefing today, President Raisi said that there are hundreds of women who are killed every day in Great Britain, for instance, when he was asked by a British reporter about this woman's death.
It's whataboutism, isn't it? Let me deflect what's going on in my neck of the woods and blame somebody else for what's going on in theirs. Again, it just comes down to simple, basic human rights, and we stand for those human rights. These women, and it is largely a women's movement right now, but they absolutely have the right to peacefully protest, and certainly they have the right to communicate what they will or they won't wear and make those decisions for themselves. So we again urge the Iranian government to stop the crackdown, allow for peaceful dissent, and to do what's right by the Iranian people.
John Kirby, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for being with us.